Alright, so the question is this a CR10S5 or is this an overgrown Ender? Well, I just gave it a new name. I'm calling it the Crender 6 Pro. Now, what makes this so different from the initial CR10S5? Well, again, this is one of my printers. Thanks Tim for giving me this printer several years ago. He gave me this printer because we do a lot of printing on big parts. And before we got a big printer, we had to chop them up, slice them, make them to small sizes in order to print them on a smaller print bed size, and then we started gluing it, and it was a pain. So we decided, what if we could get a bigger printer? And he got me this printer. So I appreciate that very much, Tim. Thank you. Now, printer has been working great for me. I made some changes in the past, and it was about time for me to do some more changes. Why? Well, I learned that there's motherboards out there, 32 bits, which are much better than the 16-bit. Sorry, I think it's 8-bit that I had before, the original one. I had the Easy ABL, and although it worked fine, I started using the BLTouch, as you know, is this one right there. And definitely, I prefer the BLTouch over the other one. It's a mechanical means, very accurate. Doesn't matter what the surface is, it always gives me great results. At least on my Enders, which I have a few of them, and each one of them has a BLTouch. So, what makes this machine different from what it was initially? Right, so one of the first things, and I'll go in the box in a moment, right, is when I installed the direct drive. This is a micro switch direct drive, all metal hot end. I assembled this before going to the heavy modification. My problem was I lost height. Why? Because of the setup, when it came up to the Z brace here, it would just hit. Now, it was 500 millimeter stock, and what I decided to do was, well, I should just raise this a bit. So rule of thumb, I got myself a 2040 extrusion, I tapped the ends, I bolted it on, and now, because of this and my mistakes, I now have a total height of 600 millimeters instead of the standard 500 millimeters. So along with that, I had to install new lead screws, if you notice there, and I could easily now install my Z-Sync belt. Now, some people online will say you don't need that if you have a dual motor. Well, once you power off the stepper motors, they go off, and one will eventually turn a little bit than the other, and you'll get a little bit of a sideness. With this belt, all you really assure is when the power is off, it stays still. Someone said you could burn the motors. I've used this for the past 3 years, and I have not burned the motors. It has the original motors. And in theory, you shouldn't burn out the motors because there's nothing to burn out. Yes, you could burn it out if you do something to it, but when I say there's nothing to burn out, if it's in sync, right, it's in sync, and they have to move the same rate. Unless one motor's moving faster than the other, then you will have the gantry, instead of raising parallel, it starts raising like this. I'm exaggerating, of course. Okay. Oh, that's back there, some of my collections. Yeah. So, what's new? Well, like I said, 2040 extrusions give me more height. I use the same Z-brace. I had to place a new thread rod here, which I cover with insulation foam, and then on the back I put this rod longer, and so I can install back my Z-Sync belt. Also over here, right, in this end here, pardon the mess, you can't really see it. I actually have these were brass initially. I changed those to POM, which is a plastic, no need lubrication. You can't see this well. Let me see. Now we can see it. Alright? So you can see now it's this black nut here, trapezoid nut. Now this one is tightened completely. This one is tightened with a nut on the bottom. There's back and forth on this. Should this be tightened? No, leave it loose. Honestly, the way things are, this should be tightened so it doesn't move back and forth. If it needs to be move back and forth, they shouldn't have not used a screw or a bolt. They should have used some other means. So in this case, I do tighten them down. I have no problem with binding. In this on the other one I don't have. This one I did. As soon as I tightened this one, so I put a longer screw, put a nut underneath, tighten it, so at least I have that fixed. And it goes up and down sweetly, no problems. So they're both tight on both ends. Nothing's going to come off. What else do we have? Well, besides that, I placed this here for the filament sensor. So I still have to program that into the firmware once I get the firmware installed. I took away all the dampeners. I had dampeners on this before, so with a 32-bit, I remove all dampeners. The only one I left is on the back here. Because either I have to make the whole brace again. Here, let me do a close-up. That brace was done considering the damper. But if I take that away, I'll have to figure out a way to attach the motor to that bracket. And really, I just took out the one on the X, the Y, I left it there. There's no harm. If there is, I will remove them. And the Z had no damper, so Z stayed the same. Now, as I mentioned, I changed those. So I took everything out of its leveling position or 90-degree perpendicular position. So all of this, I went through the time to make sure this was flat, one with the other. Well, these two, this one and the other one, were parallel. After they were parallel, I would tighten them. Once they were tightened, I put a square here, and I would adjust up here to bring this either back or forward, back or forth, until I achieved a 90-degree angle here. Then I tighten these on the side. Build plate is the same that I've always have. I took away the glass. I still have the glass. Well, I don't. My wife is using it actually for something very cool, actually. But I'll get the glass one of these days when she gets tired of it. So far, it's been 2 years. She's not tired of it. And what else is there? Basically, on this, I have it mounted on this. Spools for now. I do want to raise this up so I can place the box underneath it. So for this machine, these modifications took me a while to do, mostly because I take my time doing it and I want to make sure I do it nicely. I went through the time to level this as well with the brackets, make sure they were flat. I don't want the gantry being to the side, not by any bit. There's always inaccuracy, but the less I get, the better. So I tighten these up and I check the rollers and make sure they were adjusted properly. So there we have that part. Not too much on this, other than raising the height in the direct drive unit. Also, we're going to have the BLTouch. Now it's out for now because I still have to connect the wire. And why it's not connected now, I'll show you in a moment. So one of the things I wanted was to keep the box. Now this, I purchased this on eBay, just the box alone. So pretty much beyond the box, I placed everything else. If you notice here, right, let's see if I could do a zoom here. Actually, focus. Right, we have a BTT TFT35 E3 version 3 display. This is a touchscreen. This is a new fan. Remember, this box was empty, so I got a new fan for here, which circulates the air inside. Then here on the bottom part, right, we have the Battery Tech board. There it is, the SKR Mini E3 version 2. It's over here on this side. Hey, if I put the phone upside down, it might see, but I won't do that for now. I lost the heat sinks, so I had to buy a pack of 20. They were cheaper than just buying 4. And what else? Then the fan on the back is an Octava fan. Still maintain this 12 volts. You might be asking, why didn't I go with the full 24 volts since I'm doing all this? I could have done 24 volts, but first thing was that the bed here is 12 volts. So I would need to invest in changing this bed to a 24 volt version instead of a 12 volt. So that's extra expenditure. And it heats up fine. I do have a different different bed. Sorry for my words. I'm still a little bit sick, so just bear with me. But I've never connected it. It's I think it's Canovo, 120 volts. I need to install that with a relay and 120 volts, it's a mini pain. But I decided not to go with that. I'll just stay with this, keeping it simple while I make my life complicated with this. So all this wires, the pigtail here on the back part, right, it has heat shrink now. All this, I took the time to solder all these to these plugs, which I purchased separately. The MOSFET or the module for the heated bed, I also installed that. Purchased this, installed this. All the cables, I cut these and crimped the connectors. You might say I'm smart. No, I just used one that I had. I have one of these boxes, so I just took it off and make sure that makes sense. So I try to keep everything in code: red, black, yellow, black, 12 volts. If it's 120 volts or more, I have this with this cover inside so you don't get zapped. I still need to cover the mean-wheel power supply. This is the mean-wheel power supply, 12 volts. It has no cover underneath, so I'm going to have to do something before sealing it. And yes, so it was a major pain. Here on the bottom, right, I wish I had something to point. Sure, I have something to point right now. This is the power to the board. This here actually is for the fans, 12 volts, additional 12 volts. And what I did was, excuse me, was I simply placed two of the fans together, and I placed it with a jumper. And you can see it over here. So it's a Y type of jumper. There it is. That's one of them. The other one has to be around there someplace. So that way I could connect the fans without cutting this part off. I could have cut this off and spliced it and placed it in there, but this is a more neater thing, and that way I don't have to, if I need to change the fan in the future, just disconnect, place a new one and connect it. I don't have to go through the splicing process. Then this here is the thermistor for the hot end. No, this is the thermistor for the hot end, sorry. This is the thermistor for the bed. This one right here is for the hot bed, but it's not a thermistor. This is what would have given power to the bed, but now it serves as a signal. It goes all the way to the MOSFET. In the MOSFET, here we have the 12 volts coming in, positive, negative. The 12 negative here goes directly to the bed, and then the, where do I get the power to? Oh, the power comes from here. The 12 volt positive comes directly from the power supply to the heated bed, and negative comes here to the MOSFET. That's the way the other one was wired up, so I try to keep it the same. Here, this is positive and negative down here, but if you know, there's two white cables. At the end of the day, this also only serves as a signal. So being a signal, it doesn't matter, it has no polarity. I verified this online because I was concerned that I might have actually burned this up in the future if I had this wrong. If I am wrong, please just let me know, leave a comment, so I don't have to pay my insurance for mistakenly taking this off or installing it correctly and thus burning my house down. But it should be fine. Then what else? That's basically it. So I have one fan here new, the other fan here new, so it can be quiet. The manual power supply has its own fan. I didn't touch that. I need to cover this underneath because it will be exposed, so I shouldn't. And all of these were soldered in there. I just took my sweet time doing all this. And the motherboard is new. Now, it does not have any firmware. It has a firmware on it, but it's not any that I have done. So I'll be turning this on in a moment so you can see how it turns on. Actually, let's turn that on now. I have power in it. And I was touching that. Oh my God. Right, power's on. If you hear a bit boom, it's been a pleasure seeing you. Or chatting with you. Or videoing with you. Okay. Nah, joking. Alright, so there's the MOSFET kicking in. And the fan in the back just turned in. Very silent. This fan is not on. So this fan only turns on, I guess, when the driver... No, it actually turns on when the fan for the extruder turns on. So it should be 24 volts all the time, so I don't know why it's not on. I'll have to look into that. It's not on, so that's something I will need to troubleshoot later. But it should be on. According to this, it's 12 volts directly. I don't know why it's not on. I could be mistaken. The fan for the cooling part, which is here connected, and then this is another fan, which is the one that's in the back. Maybe that should be the one that should be turning on. Don't know. Alright, I'll figure that out. Besides that, what else is there? There will be troubleshooting. If I need to do any firmware update to the touchscreen here, I'm going to have to open this up because the USB port, not USB, yeah, the USB port's here and the SD card slide is here. That's where you do the upgrades or print from. So I cannot find a 90-degree SD card that adapted that will go this way. I have space here, but not enough. I don't want to cut to the side. Just call me lazy. OCD. So I don't want to mess up things. So I still have to figure out why this doesn't turn on. Right? See, it's off. Maybe it turns on when I start printing. Don't know. I'll see. Now let's take a look at the screen. Since there's no smoke, let's take a look here. Alright, so even though it is upside down, right, I'm just going to press here. Let's do the button. I think it's the button. 1, 2, and 3. Yep. And now I go with Marlin. And I press the button over here. And it's upside down. We have that. So the part cooling fan is not moving. Minus 14 on both sides. So that means, oh well, obviously it's the thermistor is not connected. I have not connected this to the printer. Sorry about that. So minus 14 means that it's an open thermistor and it's not connected. I don't have the bed connected. I don't have the hot end connected yet. So none of that is connected. So that makes perfect sense. X, Y, and Z, when I get to it, I'll deal with it. Now I do have to update the firmware, so really I just want to see if it turns on and if everything's quote unquote working properly. Right now, the only thing that concerns me is the fan that's not turning on. You actually see the back fan is not turning on either. So I have to see if that's normal or not. Alright, so I'm going to turn this off now. And let's see, yeah, it powers down. No smoke. I'm going to turn it on again. I don't see anything turning on, so let's see. I'm going to press here. That came up. Whatever that says, ready, but really not. 1, 2, and 3. Oops. 1, 2, 3. And let's go with Picture Tech. And I guess I could fiddle around here with settings. What else is there before I wrap this video up? There'll be a follow-up on this once I get it working, of course. This here, all the cables that goes to the stepper motors, I replaced them. I replaced the X, Y, and Z. And since this is a dual Z, it has 2 cables. I think they're 1 meter long. I bought them long enough so I don't need extensions. And I placed them in this nice black sheath or cover. It's a pain to put on, but it looks nice. So that's just to add to the build. So other than that, I think I have a little bit of work. I'm going to see why the fans don't turn on. Maybe they don't turn on initially. I'll just compare with another one. Or I'll go online. And I'll take it from there. Alright, there's no smoke, so we should be good. If you have any questions, comments, feel free. I hope to have this assembled soon because I do want to print something for the B9, which is one of my hobbies. And plus I like to build other things, so I really need the build size, at least the 500 by 500, not so much the height, but I can always use the height. So priority on this one is high. Finish this. Then I have another machine that I need to troubleshoot. I have another one to fix. Looks like I just spent time fixing, but hey, it's part of the hobby. Alright, enjoy, have fun, stay safe. And I would say print, build, and enjoy, but in this case we don't have printing, so just enjoy. Have a great one, everyone. Bye.